but I cannot hear anything. Huh. Okay. All right. Now we're cooking. Hello. Can I get a hello?
Hello.
How you doing, Madam Clerk? All right. So we are live on YouTube.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna give you back the controls. All right.
Mateo,
Yes,
can you mute and call me on my cell?
of course.
Thank you. Hi, Tess. Hi, Jessica.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm sitting here in hot old Portland.
Oh, it's hot here. It's 80 degrees in this office, Tess. How hot are
This
you?
attic is cooking. I'm gonna be bright red by the end of this meeting.
Okay, but I do have a fan. There's a fan here.
Ooh.
The house is air conditioned, but we try to save money.
Good. Well, I do need to remind everyone that we are we're streaming on YouTube. It's live, and we do have one attendee in attendance. So the meeting should be starting in about 10 or 11 minutes, and I'm going to mute myself until then.
What's the
Alright.
temperature in Fort Bragg?
In this office, it's 80. Let me check what the actual temperature is, because whew, it's been hot.
Coming home Wednesday.
My phone says
Are you
it's
coming home?
76 currently.
Oh, thank you.
It's a
That's pretty hot for Fort Bragg. That's pretty dang hot. We were in Sun River and it was not raining. Well, sort of raining. It was cool, like Fort Bragg normally is in the summer,
Mhm.
which is really unusual for Sun River. Usually we go there and go to the pool and hang out and do family stuff. But we did a lot of hikes and riding bikes, and it was fun with the grandkids.
Nice.
Sun River's nice.
It's our annual go-to vacation place with the family.
It's a great family place because there's
Yeah.
a little bit of everything to do.
Yep.
And it's beautiful, even year round.
You got those mountains right in the background, and the lots of fishing and boating and golfing and hiking and biking and everything else.
Are folks wearing masks out there much?
Yeah, Oregon is very mask conscious, very, very mask conscious. The other states like Boise, Idaho, sort of 50-50. Nothing in Utah. I never saw any masks in Utah except Salt Lake City. 50-50 on Nevada. And most of the places I didn't see them, I would really want to see them, like at gas stations and service places where a million people are driving through from wherever they're from. And people feel like they're just immune.
Mm.
I read that 60% or more of people in the United States would like to see masks as a federal thing. Oh, she's got her background on.
I'm experimenting. I don't know if this is gonna happen.
I got a garden I could put up.
It always bothers me how like you dip in
You
and
disappear.
out of it. I was just pondering it because my attic is so lovely. As soon as it gets darker, I have to flip around. I don't know about that.
There's the roadies in spring in my front yard.
Nice.
We're missing the boats.
The
Bernie doesn't
boat.
have his boats on. Boats and water.
Monkeyed around with one, but it might be too much.
Oh my goodness.
That's great.
That'll drive somebody crazy, right?
No, no.
Bernie, how did you get my brain up behind you?
Oh, I like the one that's got the red thing on it. What is
That's the
that?
queen.
The queen has red? Nice.
Yeah, well, the red represents the year. So that
Oh.
she was last year's queen.
I see.
Okay, I will be right back.
Touch it.
Hi,
Doesn't
Lindy.
matter. Doesn't matter.
Thank you. There we go.
Mateo, do you have it set up that I'll be able to do a screen share at the beginning?
I do.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm. I'm going to do one first with, let's see if this works. Everybody stand up. I'm standing already.
Everybody, hi.
Mr. Mayor.
Hey,
Hi.
Mayor.
Pretty hot today.
Oof.
I almost bought a fan. Pretty muggy.
Tabitha, you can correct me. I think I recall that the city attorney told us that if someone was going to recuse, they have to give the reason, state the reason if it's a business or personal conflict, right?
Correct.
The mayor may want to reorder one of the items so that it's at the end and ask the vice mayor to become the acting mayor so that he can present that item he has a conflict on. So, Mr. Mayor, as you release it over to Bernie, please announce the reason for your conflict
Okay,
and then leave the conference and you don't have to come back.
that's the intention. I was gonna add it on to the end, and you guys could just, Mr. Vice Mayor, just carry it out for a long time,
Carry on.
How's
What's
the
the
audio level, June? Can
I'm
you hear
sorry.
me?
I can hear you, Lindy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chantel, you want to give me a mic check?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. John Smith, how about you?
You can hear me.
I'm sorry, the other Smith. John,
Yeah, testing.
mic check?
Can you hear me okay?
Nope.
No?
Can you up your game?
At all? I'm off mute here.
I
Can
can
you check-
barely hear John.
Test, 1, 2, 3, test.
Can you
Really-
check the
really
volume?
quiet.
Volume is under
Bless you.
video settings.
Okay. Mateo, do you have a headset we can give John?
I'll work on it.
Okay.
It's not the first time.
Jessica, I have to change my my background. We can't both have the.
Oh, shoot. That's
I'll
totally your
change it.
background. Okay, no, I'll change it, Mr. Mayor. You've used that before. Let me figure something else
Well, I
out.
have others. I could use this Atsuchi Point. I'll change it. See if you like this one. Let's see.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we'll stay with that.
Thank you. I'm sorry for
Clear sky on the.
stepping on your toes.
Hey, no, it's all good. I love that image. I have to give credit to Mr. Mallory. They believe that's his. The one that I have is his photograph.
Hmm.
Okay, I just got word from Mateo that John needs to boost his audio digitally. If that doesn't work, there's a headset on my desk, which I can bring to you. So you want to give that a try?
You can get started. I'll work on it.
John, did you find the mic settings? They're under video settings. It's not intuitive, but there's a mic volume setting.
I see blue crayons.
Okay. Oh, whoops, sorry.
So cute. Okay, so I think we're all here. Are we ready to start, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Welcome, everybody. We will commence the meeting of the Fort Bragg City Council. The City Council meets concurrently as the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Number 1 and the Fort Bragg Redevelopment Successor Agency. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance
the
to the
flag
Flag
of the
of the United States of America
and to
and to the republic
for
for
which
which
it
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
Please take notice due to the provisions of the governor's executive orders N25-20 and N29-20, which suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act and the order of the health officer of the County of Mendocino to shelter in place to minimize the spread of COVID-19. The Fort Bragg City Council members and staff will be participating by video conference in this meeting of Monday, September 28th, 2020. June, would you have any housekeeping rules for our Zoom attendees and those calling in?
Yes, certainly. And also I'd like to do a brief roll call just for the record, please.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Albin Smith,
Here,
Lee,
Here.
Marcel Hay,
Here.
Norvell,
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, June.
Yes, of course. The Zoom requirements are just to please go to our website if you're attending virtually and follow the links to the Zoom webinar. When the mayor or acting mayor calls for public comment, you can use the raise hand feature and you'll be called on in order. If you don't know how to use that feature yet, you can use the chat and send me a message and I can give you instruction.
Thank you, June. Agenda review. There is one change to tonight's agenda. Our business item 8C, which is to receive, report, and consider adoption of City Council resolution ratifying the city manager's execution of a memo of understanding between the City of Fort Bragg and Adventist Health Mendocino Coast, authorizing Adventist Health Mendocino Coast application and enrollment in the 340B program of the Public Health Services Act. I will move to the end of tonight's agenda, and I will recuse myself. And the reason I'm recusing myself from that item is that I'm employed by Adventist Health Mendocino Coast Hospital. So that I will recuse myself. I'm tagging it on to the end. The Vice Mayor is gracious enough to take the meeting from there, and he will excuse me. We have no mayor's recognitions and announcements tonight. June, would you have any public comments on non-agenda items this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did receive about a week ago a request by Paula Cohen to read some comments about the 2020 census into the record, but our city manager is going to cover all of that information about the 2020 census when she discusses staff comments. But I did just receive another one This is from Nancy Bennett. It says, I would like to see continued funding to our tourism efforts and field improvement maintenance as Measure AA-AB has provided for. As a downtown merchant, I see the impact our investments have made towards promoting Fort Bragg as a destination. I would like to have our social media, website, and eventually sports supported. Our fields are an asset to the community. They once held soccer events that brought in hundreds of families who ate, shopped, and stayed. When these stopped happening, it was a huge loss to many. The fields not only supported yearly events, they were the backbone to many community and family events as well. From Nancy. And I have no others. And if anyone who is attending the meeting would like to speak on non-agenda items, please use the raise hand feature. There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Would you have received any comment on the consent calendar this evening? Public
No,
comment?
none.
And we don't have a closed session this evening. Our item 3 is staff comments, and I will start with our city manager, Tabitha Miller.
Good evening. So the one I wanted to start with, and I'm going to go ahead and do a share screen here. Host disabled participant screen share. June.
All panelists, go ahead.
Okay. So we wanted to take a moment and just remind everybody that September 30th is the last day for the to respond to the to the 2020 census. One of the easiest ways is right here, which is just logging into my2020census.gov. The questionnaire is right there that you can take. In addition to that, you can also call, there's 2 numbers that you can call. They're open from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. The first number is for English. It's 1-844-330-2020. And for Spanish, you can call 1-844-468-2020. And then if you need local assistance, if you have questions on how to access the information, you can call 707-336-2459. And just a reminder, this is critical to get our numbers aligned. This actually adds to our federal funding, state funding. It's used in multiple areas. So we really, if you have not responded, please do. Again, it's my2020census.gov. So the second item, as long as I'm sharing screen here, I'm gonna bump. I wanted to provide the council just a little bit of background, and bear with me on where we're at with eviction protection. So quite a bit has happened in the month of September, and they may impact what the council decides to do going on. So first of all, just a reminder that the city eviction moratorium expires on September 30th, 2020. And that was in line with the previous order from the governor. A couple other things have happened. On September 1st, the California Judicial Council rule expired. And this was the rule that basically had prohibited courts from moving forward with processing evictions. And that was to be in place until 90 days after the governor's order was lifted. So what happened then is that in response to that, the legislature actually passed AB 3088, and that's effective August 31st, and provided some pretty broad protections to residential tenants. And I'll go into more of that in the meantime, just in a moment. Additionally, effective September 1st, 2020, the United Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued orders temporarily preventing certain residential evictions, and that was good through December 31st, 2020. And then on top of it, to make it even a little more complicated, the governor came out with a rule on September 24th that actually allows city to enact local commercial only, so commercial only eviction protection. So it allows you to extend the eviction moratorium that the city has in place for just commercial. Just a few things that I'd like to make sure everybody's aware of. And the reason I put up this state website is it's a great resource for tenants and landlords, and it provides the forms that you need. It also provides you quite a bit of information if you have questions and resources. So it's pretty helpful, and it's where I've actually pulled some of the information for this. So residential tenants now have protection for COVID hardship between March 4th, 2020 and August 31st, 2020 for no payment at all of rent. And then from September 1st, 2020 through January 31st, 2021, they can still claim that COVID hardship, but they must pay at least 25% of the rent that's due. And I'm going to stress there is a form on this website. It is called the Declaration of Hardship. And it's really important that if you are trying to take the protection under the state requirements of AB 3088, that you fill that out and give a copy to your landlord. So that's pretty important. The website's here. You can find the form. It's really pretty straightforward to fill out. A couple of other things is that tenants are still responsible for all unpaid rent under the new rulings. But what happens is the state has expanded the small claims court jurisdiction to allow landlords to recover these past due rents starting on March 1st, 2021. So you'll probably want to work together to try to figure out a repayment plan. There is a requirement that you provide additional documentation if you're what's considered a high income tenant, and that's based on 130% of the median income for your county, which for us, for a family of 4 here in Mendocino County, would be $91,190. You would be considered a high income tenant. And just a reminder, these protections do not apply to commercial customers or commercial tenants. Additionally, there's a few other rights that come into place with AB 3088. One is that it extends the homeowner's Bill of Rights and anti-foreclosure protections to small landlords who have 1 to 4 units who are not living in those units. It does increase, if you are a landlord, it increases the penalties on landlords who self-help in eviction. So if you lock out tenants, throw out property, shut off utilities to try to push them out, you can be fined between $1,000 and $2,500. And it also requires that landlords provide tenants notice of those certain additional protections. So it's really important if you are a landlord that you follow through on this website and take a look at what those requirements are. So just a couple things to keep track of. The interesting thing about the CDC protections that went into place on September 4th is that there's a caveat that they only apply in states that they don't apply in states that provide the same or greater protection. So because California's AB 3088 provides better protections, you don't get the CDC order applicable here. And with that, I just wanted to kind of follow up. Again, this is a question for City Council that I'd ask you to sort of weigh in on. Do you want to call a special meeting on September 30th to consider an extension of just the commercial eviction moratorium? And another reminder, and I'm going to bump space back here again. Just another reminder that we still have the COVID home tenant-based rental assistance program open. And that does provide a rental assistance for low and moderate income folks. Again, you can access that by emailing tbra@fortbragg.com or calling 707-961-2823, extension 106. This page happens to be just on the front page of the city's website, so you can also follow the links there. It is first come, first served, so I encourage anybody who is interested or needs assistance for COVID-related reasons with their rent to follow through with that. So third reminder is the Tuesday, October 13th will be the next City Council meeting. It won't be on the Monday because of Indigenous Peoples Day. Wanted to remind you that we're celebrating that. So put it on your calendars for Tuesday. Another thing I wanted to provide an update on, and Council Member Alban Smith has been serving on the EDFC and was pretty well aware and made us aware of the broadband consortium projects that are going on. And we met with the Tom West and Jeff Tyrell from North Bay, North Coast Broadband Consortium on Friday. And what we're looking at is they have 3 projects planned. And in the second project, which they'll be starting probably sometime after November, it's putting in a backbone, and it is a hard line buried in the ground that will run essentially up and down the coast, and including essentially the Highway 1 corridor. It will pass through Fort Bragg, but I wanted to make sure everybody understood that we are not included in expanding the broadband off of that backbone. And the reason for that is that basically you're considered to have adequate broadband if a single person or a single household has access to broadband in a census tract. And so Fort Bragg and the surrounding area is considered fully served by that. What we're trying to get more information from them, and both Tom and Jeff were really helpful in looking at what our opportunities are here in Fort Bragg to potentially expand broadband. And again, that would be buried cable. And looking at the cost. If we can get an estimate of the cost, we might be able to figure out how to do that, even if it's phased, looking at areas of need. But they have agreed to meet with us again, middle to late October, and I'll keep you informed sort of as we get updates on that. But that was something pretty exciting that we may be able to pursue. They're also really excited about the idea of actually being able to have a municipal owned broadband system. And again, there's some challenges there, cost, getting past the current providers, getting that off the ground. But it is something that we wanted to at least get the facts on and figure out if it's something that we would be able to put together going forward. And one final item for the mayor, I would like to ask that the mayor assign an ad hoc council committee to work on the solid waste franchise agreement. This is coming up, and it would be great to have a couple council members available that I could meet with on a regular basis and get feedback. I know I have checked with Jessica and Bernie because they currently serve on the Casper Transfer Station or the Coastal Transfer Station Committee, and there's some overlap. And I won't speak for them, but I think there may be a need to, just because of schedules and busyness, look at alternative members. So, Mr. Mayor, if you would consider appointing an ad hoc committee, I believe Councilmember Lindy Peters was interested in potentially taking Jessica's spot, but again, I'll let the council members speak to that.
Let's handle that now then, if that's okay.
Perfect.
With council. I'm willing to be a participant. Lindy, are you still willing to serve? There you are. Okay.
Yes.
We have two members agreeing. I need to take some heat off, or some of the work off of these other members that are so busy right now. Yes, Jessica.
I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for your willingness to serve. And I know that Lindy has great history with this topic that he can bring to the table that I think will serve us really well as you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I'm sorry to say I just don't have the bandwidth myself. Yeah. So I'm grateful to my colleagues for
completely understand. So we have two members, so we will. Yes, Tess.
I was just going to say, yeah, you two can do it. But I have the first part of my career was writing environmental impact reports for solid waste. So I have a little familiarity as well.
Is that an offer to serve?
That's an offer, but I don't want to take it away since you guys were so excited about doing it.
Okay. I think that I'm okay with serving there. I think that, so then we'll appoint that ad hoc committee starting this evening. And Lindy, what do you think a time frame should be for that? Typically 6 months?
Well, I can meet and confer at any time.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we have to obviously adjust our schedules possibly between the two of us to arrange a meeting time, but ready and willing to serve on that committee. It's been a while since I've been involved in the solid waste issues, but I do have a pretty good background.
Excellent.
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest for this one that we might actually want to appoint it for either 9 months or a year.
Okay.
Just to give ourselves time. And if we come to an agreement and are able to bring a franchise agreement forward to the council for approval earlier, all the better.
Great. Let's appoint this ad hoc committee effective this evening for 9 months with obviously with an option to renew, right? we can extend it. Yes, June.
While we're talking about ad hoc committees, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to point out that next month, 2 positions on the Noyo Harbor Commission will expire. Those are 2 4-year terms. One is appointed jointly by the Board of Supervisors and the City Council to act as chair, which is currently held by Joe Kaido. And the other is a 4-year term of a regular commissioner appointed just by the council that's being held by William Faulkner. I would like to put out applications and information, but at the last time that we appointed a joint chair with the Board of Supervisors, the mayor appointed an ad hoc committee to collect the applications and conduct interviews and make recommendations to the joint council and board. I don't know if you want to do that again, or if you'd just like me to process the applications and come back to the full council, or I just, you could give me some direction on that.
What are the wishes of my colleagues? Would you prefer that we just delegate our city clerk to accept applications and bring them to us? And we could have, of course, a special meeting for selection process. Or would you prefer an ad hoc committee to assist in the selection of our appointee?
Mr. Mayor,
I
I
think
would
June-
recommend that we let the city clerk do it and just bring us all of the applicants.
Okay,
I agree.
okay.
We've never had a flood of people that want to serve, so it
Okay.
shouldn't be too difficult.
Well, I think the last time we appointed a chair, when Joe Kaido was nominated by the Board of Supervisors and the City Council, there were about 14 applications. But the last go around, we only had like a handful, like 3. I'm happy to process them and then call a special meeting of both the board and the council just to do we could do interviews on Zoom and you could deliberate and make your appointments at that time. But it needs to occur before October 31st when the 2 positions will be terminated.
Okay, so do you think that would be a special meeting, or can we try for either the 13th meeting or the 26th meeting if we want to fit it into a regular meeting? Maybe I'll leave it to our city manager to determine how heavy the agenda looks for those 2 meetings. Otherwise, we can call one special just for this selection process, which is fine with me as well. So I'm
We
okay.
can check schedules and see what we can try to organize and let you know where it
All
goes
right.
from there.
I'd
Yeah.
suggest the later one, Mr. Mayor, simply because that gives more people time to fill out and submit their applications, and
Sure.
for me to poll the members of the Board of Supervisors to see if they would be available to attend that meeting on Monday, the 26th.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's
thank
try for that one, June. Speaking of ad hoc committees, did we extend, June, the broadband ad hoc committee?
I can check that for you by looking at my schedule.
I'm pretty sure we did.
I think we did.
Okay,
Yes.
I think that this would be a good time to call a meeting for that committee as well. And I still sit on that committee. I'm not sure who else is on it with me. Is
I think it's Alvin Smith.
Alvin Smith? Okay. So Tabitha, if you would help us with coordinating a meeting for this ad hoc committee, I think it's a good time to
Okay.
reconvene that committee.
It's extended to February 10th, 2021.
Okay,
So I'll try to set something up outside of this meeting with both
Okay.
of you. So
yeah, anytime in October, if that works for, or November, whatever works, just not at Thanksgiving time, right? So whatever you can set up and we can agree on, I'm willing to meet as soon as it's opportune for you.
maybe we'll wait until we have a follow-up meeting. Maybe we can wait until then, and then I can bring you better information on where we're.
Okay. That's great. Thank you so much. Anything else from staff comments? Okay, thank you so much. Matters from council members. I would just like to offer our prayer and support for our friends and neighbors in Sonoma and Napa County with these fires. How terrifying that is for our family and friends that live down there. St. Helena Hospital is evacuated. It's a pretty large Adventist hospital, and all of the patients are, and I don't know that it's even still standing, to tell you the truth. And so our hearts go out, and any support that we're able to render for people that are coming to us for assistance, we're here to help as much as possible. So just our prayers for all those people in the fire zones right now. Any other comments from my colleagues? Councilmember Peters.
Well, since you broached the subject, I'll share with you a personal experience that happened with me. It was my wife Sarah's birthday yesterday, and we thought it might be nice to do something fun, special on her birthday, and knew that some hot weather was approaching. So we booked 2 nights, last night and tonight, at the Flamingo Hotel in Santa Rosa. We had a nice day yesterday on her birthday. We had a nice lunch. We knew there was a fire in Napa. It didn't seem to be a big deal. We had a nice dinner outside in a cafe near the plaza where the train station is located, and noticed there were a few little ashes that were coming down, but didn't mind the ambience and the atmosphere. Lovely dinner, nice birthday. Then came last night. We were in our hotel room in the Flamingo Hotel when at 8:30 p.m. my phone made a rather odd noise. And I picked it up, and it was a NICS alert alerting us that there was mandatory evacuations in areas that weren't too far from us, and that an evacuation warning was just adjacent to where we were staying, which was in the northeast part of Santa Rosa, north of Highway 12. Obviously, at that point, getting to sleep was not something that was very easy to do. So we began trying to find out what was going on. The reason I'm sharing this experience is I want people to realize that when you are in a situation like that, critical thinking is difficult. What happened next was a couple hours later, we watched KRON Channel 4, which did an excellent job at the fire scene reporting. No other sources of reporting were going on. The front desk had no information. And we then were able to, using our cell phones, superimpose a map of where we were with these different evacuation zones. And that's why I wanted to share this experience with people, because I'm not sure if you are aware, living where you might be watching this meeting in the city of Fort Bragg and the immediate outskirts in the sphere of influence, what zone you're in. That's important information to know. We didn't know. So eventually what happened was the fire chief for the city of Santa Rosa was in a live actuality on, I think it was again, KRON Channel 4. On our phones, we saw that he was advising people to evacuate. And then we saw that our particular area was an evacuation warning zone. Now, that's when you have to make a decision. And we decided at 1:15 this morning that we would pack up our stuff and get out. And that's exactly what we did. Arriving back in Fort Bragg at 3:45 a.m. this morning, needless to say, hardly any sleep, a very worrisome situation. The fire was extremely rapidly approaching our area and devastating areas that it was moving through. So I think at some point, I know we have an emergency evacuation plan, but I'm not sure if everybody knows what zone they're in and what sort of evacuation areas that they have designated to leave. It was very scary. I hope I'm able to function at the meeting here tonight because I'm operating on little or no sleep. Basically did have a little nap this afternoon, but we were the first ones pretty much out of there. We made that decision, and yeah, it cost some money and it kind of put a damper on the weekend, but we're here, we're safe, and God help those down there in that fire because it is really unbelievably bad. And to experience it and go through that and rely on a cell phone for information at 1:15 in the morning in a strange hotel is not really ideal in terms of safety and evacuation procedure. So folks, you really need to get on that. I have a video on Mendocino Coast Media that is explaining how to get your go-to bag together with Derek Hoyle, an emergency coordinator for the county, or somebody that's actively involved in emergency preparations. I suggest you look for that, watch that. But to go through it firsthand, it's an experience we'll never forget, and a birthday that Sarah certainly will never forget. So be prepared, folks. We're in a real situation here, and I know I probably don't have to reiterate that thought, but when it happens to you, it really is, it comes home to roost in a heartbreaking way.
Oh, Lindy, thank you for sharing. That's traumatic, really, to go through, and from friends and family that are in that area, they're terrified as well. One of the things that I'd like to mention, Dr. Jennifer Krieger here on the coast has worked with a map maker, and there's a site called Hubs and Routes. It's a map site that they've created for alternate exits from our community, and listing all of the bridges along the entire Mendocino coast, the condition of the bridges. And so if there's a disaster, an earthquake, and some of the bridges are down, what are the alternate routes? I mean, it even goes as far as, crossing this river, this ravine to get across, to be able to access healthcare, really, when you're unable to travel up and down the coast. And it's just important for folks to know the routes out of here and the safe way out if it came to our community having to evacuate. So hubsandroutes.com is the site. So just go ahead and check it out, and just familiar. You can label your area, be a captain for your area, to say these are skills that I have that I can give to the community in a time of a disaster. And so if you just check that out when you have some time. Council, any other comments from the council? Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Morcel Hay.
All right. Gosh, thank you for sharing that, Councilmember Peters. That was, I can only imagine how you're feeling right now. Glad you guys got out of there safely. Okay, so an update on the Citizens Commission. We had our second meeting, and it continues to be challenging, very challenging. I will say, I'm really I've been trying to focus on creating the structure to get us out the gates, so that then hopefully the commissioners can step up and help build the structure for going forward. And we're chasing our tails a little bit. We did have a professional facilitator, Mr. Jim Peel, who was with us for this meeting, from Stir Fry Seminars. They are renowned for their diversity facilitation and training, and have worked with governments and agencies and corporations and individuals all over. So he was pretty, I've gotten very positive feedback about him specifically from the commissioners, but we have our challenges. And what I will say is at the last report out I gave, I spoke to the fact that I felt the commission wasn't as balanced as our intention. And I did add 2 commissioners in order to address that issue. So I will say that I consulted with my colleague, the vice mayor, and he didn't support it. And I did ask him to basically let me proceed and take the fall, deal with any backlash, because I really believe that this is what needed to happen. And so I would like to share a little bit about that. It basically, these are 2 commissioners that I had wanted to add to the commission and backed down on and chosen not to, because we were trying to keep it smaller. But after the first preliminary meeting, where we were supposed to just be ironing out the technical pieces of it, but and we were missing folks. It wasn't really the first official. At that meeting, it became really clear that we needed more balance in the philosophical piece of it. We had 2 people who were in a position to basically qualify their experiences, and a group of people who were coming from a different point of view. And I think we were having trouble bridging that. So I felt it was important to have some representation from members in our community who are essentially, you know, BIPOC allies. And we have a lot of people in our community who I would say are of that kind of mind state in relation to the topic of the name change and us as a community. So I did add Andy Wellspring and Christy Olson Day to the commission in order to bring more balance to the dialogue. I felt that they both came with very strong listening skills, diplomatic and open minds, and very diplomatic, active approaches to the subject matter. You know, the question of whether to change the city's name is one that is intrinsically tied to a question of the racial implications and whether there's inequity in our community. And we tasked this commission with having a broader discussion than just the name change. And I feel that these two people can actually help us diplomatically engage in that dialogue and gain some ground within it. So it's been, needless to say, it's been a bit fraught, and we are working on finding our way through here. We will be meeting again in the first week of October, and really spending that time on a discussion of what our purpose and goals are, because we are, as a group, having a really hard time aligning around that, although the city council was, you know, it was a pretty clear shot in the city council conversation. So I just wanted, sorry to be a little long-winded, but it has been an intense ride. And, you know, I really believe that we needed those extra two voices to strike the balance in the dialogue that could help us move forward, because it just wasn't, I didn't have faith that would work. So, and by working, my goal here, and correct me, council, if you are of a different mind, my goal is to create the space for these commissioners to have a conversation about what our current state is, what our historic state has been, and what it would mean to change our name, and whether that is a meaningful action and needs to happen. And if not, what is there any action that we as a city need to take in order to ensure that it is a just and balanced home for all of its citizens? So that's the conversation we're trying to push towards. And yeah. I welcome your feedback.
My first question, Jessica, is you think that with the commissioners you've selected, you can move forward, even with the two new members? Do you feel that it's possible to get to a place where you have constructive dialogue enough to have a work session that you would bring recommendations back to us? That's my first question. My second question is the vice mayor still a part of the commission? And if not, why is that?
To address your first question, I'm still holding out hope. You know, there's a lot of spin right now within the group, and I'm really trying to keep directing it towards productive. Okay, how do we build this? How do you want to build this? Okay, you're unhappy. How do you want to build this? And you know, I understand the concerns. This is a really passionate, heated topic. People feel like their home culture is under threat, and their history is under threat. And really, I get that, but I'm not confident, Mayor. I'm not confident, but I'm holding out hope. I think this is a time that is particularly important to really try to push through these difficult communications and bridge the divide in our community. So I'm going to keep trying. I will let the vice mayor speak to the second piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, first of all, I'd like to apologize. For some reason, right after we spoke about broadband, my internet is having all sorts of issues, so everybody's freezing really quick. But my thought was, and Jessica and I discussed this quite a bit, but my opinion was it was a citizens commission, not a council commission. And having 2 council members on the commission would insert too much influence of council. So my idea was to have Marcel Hay chair the commission as a moderator, more or less, and let the commission do the work that they needed to do. So that's why I didn't want to be on it. I just, and it wasn't about me not being on it. It was more about having 2 council members on it. I just felt it was inappropriate. Jessica did ask me today if I would sit in on the next meeting, and I plan to. But that's the reason I'm not on it and attending the meetings.
Councilmember Alvin Smith, did you have comment?
Spacebar isn't working. This is unrelated to that. So are we finished with that discussion?
Not quite. I think Councilman Peters may have a comment.
Well, I would hope that in these initial meetings, it's always more difficult when you get that many people in a room to agree on anything, whether the sky is blue can come under discussion. That the people on the commission that are appointed realize that this is an advisory commission. That's simply all it is. That was our intention in appointing it, and that whatever decision they come to, whatever ideas, changes in policy that they have are strictly advisory, and not to be disappointed if in fact the council chooses another direction. That their action is simply an advisory action, information gathering, and if they're clear on that, then they're not going to be disappointed if in fact a lot of work is done and the council, like I said, takes some of it, leaves some of it on the table, and embraces some ideas and decides to not go with some of the other ideas. And that would be my concern too, that a lot of work is being done by Councilmember Marcel Hay and these committee or commission members. They need to know right up front that the council will make any kind of final decision, or the electorate will. We'll put it before the voters. But whatever the commission decides is simply advisory. And I hope they understand that.
Excellent point. And Councilmember Marcel Hay, I would just say that it's your call. If you ever feel that it's not going to move forward, or it devolves into something that's not appropriate for you, then that's your decision to carry it forward or to end it, and then bring us back the information that you've garnered. But it is your call, and we leave it to your capable hands to be able to make the decisions going forward. So you had a comment?
Oh, I lost my comment. I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, at this moment, there is a lot of spin about structure, and I think you make a great point, Councilman Peters. Yeah, it's, I mean, and to your point, oh, that's what I was gonna say, apologies. Just that I felt like by bringing those other 2 commissioners on, it gave us more balance that could then give a recommendation more credibility. And I think that's something that folks can forget. They worry that there's an agenda being pushed forward, but the more that we have balanced voices, the more credibility that recommendation will hold with the community and with the council. And I really just wanted to make sure that we were setting ourselves up to be able to really stand behind wherever that recommendation lands. So,
well, thank you for your work on this. It's very important to the people of Fort Bragg, and I know it's not easy at all. And I applaud you for even getting this far, and thank you. Councilmember Alvin Smith, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and also I want to just chime in. Jessica, been there, done that, and I know you can do it. So this group sounds pretty good. Although I found that having less people was easier than more. That's just the way it's rolled for you. My comment was in a follow-up to Lindy Peters. As you know, I'm on the MCOG, Mendocino Council of Governments, and they funded a study that through a grant from the California Department of Transportation, they funded a study for the county draft evacuation and fire hazard assessment plan for Mendocino County. Now, nothing's been adopted, but certainly a great plan, and it was a wonderful start. It was done by the Cat 5 consultant company, and I submitted copious pages of notes and questions and suggestions for that due to my background. Anyway, in that plan, which is you can find online on the county website, if you just Google or use your search bar for Mendocino County Fire Evacuation Plan 2020, we are in Area 4, which is also known as Zone 4, and it goes all the way from Westport down to, well, it actually continues all the way over to Anderson Valley. But anyway, there's certain evacuation plans for that. So if anybody wants to know what zone you're on, it's Zone 4 within Mendocino County.
But if there's a fire in Westport, why would we be evacuating people in Boonville if we're all in the same zone? That's my question. Santa Rosa is very specific. They have areas drawn out in neighborhoods, you know, H2, H3, H4, all
Exactly.
these, and
yeah, that's
trying
it.
to superimpose one of those maps on a real map, because there isn't such a real map that has that information. It's a special map, and then you're looking at Google Map. I mean, let me tell you, it was a nightmare last night trying to figure the thing out. A nightmare.
No, I totally agree with you, Lindy, but it is divided into A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to M or Z.
Okay.
And we're like in Zone F, 4F, and it goes down to about S to go to Elk, and then beyond that. So there are plans, and then there's also, of course, the other zones, the other 3 zones that are further east. But if you look at that website, you can see where you are, and it has your street, and you can figure it out.
Good.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So I got a message from Supervisor Williams, and you can go and you can get the fire plan as it is posted at ted.net. Haven't looked at it, but if he says it's there, I believe him.
If he's sending it in real time, then that's pretty good. So
Yeah.
thank you, Supervisor Williams, for that great information. I think the more information we can all get, the better for all of us, so that we can share with our friends and our family, especially with the elderly that we have to look out for. Those folks really going to depend on us when it hits the fan and to evacuate. Thank you for that, Mr. Vice Mayor. Any other comments from council? Seeing none. Then let's see, we're at our consent calendar. Would any member like to pull any item off of the consent calendar for discussion this evening? Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent calendar as presented.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And second by Councilman Peters. Roll call, please, Jim.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Disclosure of ex parte communications from any members on agenda items going forward. Okay, seeing none. In June, we have a public hearing this evening. We're going to open the public hearing at 6:48 p.m. I don't have my gavel. I just do my fist. And the report tonight is by Chantel O'Neill. Chantel, welcome.
Good evening, council and viewers. I'm Chantel O'Neill, Assistant Director of the Engineering Division. And my item tonight is a public hearing to receive recommendation from the Community Development Committee, conduct the public hearing and consider adoption of City Council resolution revising the city's fee schedule for building permit fees and services. I kind of want to start out by saying that only a portion of the report that's before you tonight is consistent with that recommendation from the September 8th, 2020 CDC meeting. This action tonight does exclude the general plan maintenance fee portion. The resolution and subsequent exhibits attachment 4 and 5 describe and depict those proposed changes. So that's what was originally attached to tonight's agenda. So we did opt to exclude those fees, and we're only focusing on the building permit fees. Since the implementation of the fee schedule in 2019, I guess August of 2019, staff has experienced some issues with the way that building permit fees are processed. Some of the main challenges that we've had were with the developer deposit accounts, or DDAs. DDAs were established for all building permits with a valuation over $75,000. And what we found is that was a pretty significant quantity of the permits that we were receiving. And there was just a very large unexpected increase in workload and staff time involved in processing those building permits. We fear that there was definitely some funds that were lost because of the difficulties that we had with tracking and collecting money, as well as issues with administrative time and increases in the number of staff that would have to touch each permit. We also, utilizing DDAs also meant that we had to send the permit over to the county building department first so that they could verify the valuation of what the builder had said was the amount of the valuation of their building permit. And so there was just a really, really long time between the time that we would get a building permit application and the time that we could produce comments back to the applicant. So as you can tell, just from that brief summary, there were many, many problems that we were experiencing from these DDAs. And through that process, we're recommending some changes to the method by which we process fees. So one of the other things to keep in mind is that the attached resolution does not contain changes to any other planning or development fees established by Resolution 4163 in 2019. Everything else that is already on the existing published fee schedule will remain unchanged by this action. That includes the general plan maintenance fee. It will remain at 1.5%. So valuation and flat fee based building permits are the two most common methods that cities use for calculating fees associated with processing building permits. And the fee collection method that we established, like I mentioned earlier, we made a pretty significant change in that process last year. For a long time, we charged a 1% surcharge on the total valuation of a permit and 1.5% of the valuation for the general plan maintenance fee. And then last year we made a shift to a kind of a flat rate tiered building permit fees that started at about $150 and then went up to those DDAs that we found were difficult. And so staff is recommending that all projects which would currently qualify for those hourly based building permit fees, the DDAs, be converted to a flat fee method, which is reflective of average hourly staff rates and times associated with actually reviewing building permits from intake to inspection. And the fees that are proposed here are based on specific components associated with our review. And so down in the fee purpose section of the report, I kind of tried to emphasize a little bit what functions staff performs while they're reviewing a building permit. And so I broke it up into two categories, the public works and engineering review, and then the community development plan check review. From the engineering side of things, we always look at water, sewer, stormwater, drainage, LID or low impact development, frontage, driveway, circulation, grading, backflow devices, grease traps, and fire sprinklers. And of course, it depends on the type of permit as to which of those is selected. And then community development reviews their reviews their building permits based on things like setbacks, lot coverage, land uses, zoning review, consistency with previously established conditions. So for example, if it came with a use permit or a coastal development permit, you know, those special conditions would be necessary to apply to the building permit. In addition to the community development fees is the administrative processing, where we have to incorporate fire sprinkler ordinance compliance, waste recycling ordinance compliance, and then the typical administrative functions like creating folders, tracking, logging, collecting fees, data entry, etc. So the new proposed fee calculation uses a method. The applicant's fees are calculated based on the complexity of the project, which triggers various types of reviews. And the fees are based on the level of review required rather than a construction valuation. What we were finding is that using the valuation wasn't always compatible with the actual amount of time that we're spending. And the purpose of the fee is to recoup our costs. So in table 1, I included the fully loaded plan check staff rates. So that's from the engineering division and community development. And then you'll see that in table 2 is the this year's proposed fees, and they are based on the average time that it might take a staff to review and process a building permit. And the proposed fees shown in table 2 are based on actual hourly rates and the time tracked over the last year. You know, we do understand that, like with any fee collection method, that there is potential room for error in this. Some permits that are a single family residence might be simpler to process than an ADU. And so there is potential that some permits will subsidize others. And there won't always be a perfect match between the item that that we've selected for being most compatible with that component of the review and the fee being charged. But we do feel like it gets us much closer to having an accurate cost associated with the building permit process review.
Chantel,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Point of order. We seem to have lost the vice mayor's connectivity. And so, June, what's your recommendation? Should we take I'm sorry to interrupt you right in the middle, but I would like him to participate in this matter. So should he call in, or should we take a quick break to try to restore connectivity?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been texting with the vice mayor. I just sent him a new link to the conference. If you'd like to take like a 2-minute break or something to see if he can get in, that would be
Chantel, would
fine.
that be very disruptive to your presentation? I would like his participation, even if he called in and used the phone. Yes.
He is called in. Apparently he's using the phone.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I can move him into the panel, I think. But he's able to hear, so
Okay,
he
excellent.
would be able to join with video, but right now he can hear.
Okay, if he's able to hear and participate, then we will continue on, Chantel. Thank you so much.
Okay, so, right, so basically I was just talking about how we came up with those proposed fees in table 2. One additional item that is also new with this year's proposed fee schedule is the additional option to still maintain some way to bill directly at hourly rates using a DDA, similar to the method that we currently have, but it wouldn't necessarily be based on, a project being valued over $75,000, but rather it would be based on the complexity of the project. Speaking about, like a large housing project where there was a large apartment complex or multiple units being constructed as part of a subdivision all at the same time. Those are the kinds of things where we would want to be able to remain flexible and still charge those out at DDAs, but they would be the exception rather than the rule. So in table 2, you'll see that, we did break it down by the types of things that we typically review. And I've kind of talked earlier about what those are, broke down, new construction between smaller size ground disturbance and larger size ground disturbance. That's mostly due to the added implications of implementing our MS4 compliance for stormwater, because we have to do more paperwork, more inspections with those larger projects. So that's one of the main reasons for that tiered fee. And then So in the last year, when we brought forward fees, council had questions about those proposed fee schedules and how much certain types of projects were going to cost. So one of the exhibits that I included in tonight's packet were example typical permit cost. And I think I'm going to try to screen share just so that we can kind of look through it, see if I can. I haven't done this before, so we'll see if I can get to it. And okay. So can you all see the sample fee sheet? So this is basically what a fee sheet would look like when an applicant comes to the counter. We would fill in the top part, and then in the left-hand column, we would select the item for which the project covers. So for this first one, it's an over-the-counter permit. You know, we would just select over-the-counter. That means it doesn't get routed. Down in the bottom, there are non-departmental fees. There's nothing selected there. And then there's the general plan maintenance fee, which is the 1.5%, which is, you know, what is currently on the fee schedule. And then the business license fee, which is 0.04%. And then you can see that the total amount due is here. And so this exhibit has multiple pages, and I'm gonna stop sharing now because I think that it's probably better shown in table 3, which has a comparison of the proposed fees and the current fees. And in table 3, the one thing that's a little bit misleading is that the column 3 for the 2019-2020 fees does not depict the inclusion of the general plan maintenance fee. So even though that's a fee that can and should still be charged with each permit, after last year's fee schedule, staff temporarily ceased collecting that general plan maintenance fee. So we basically haven't been collecting it, even though it is still authorized by the original, by the previously approved resolution to collect it. There was some concern that it was disproportionate to what other jurisdictions charge and significant when compared to the total city charge building permit fees. And so what was happening is that on a small fee of $158, if the permit itself was, $10,000, then the general plan maintenance fee was going to be more than that $158 fee. So we had temporarily ceased the collection of it. We thought that we would revise it fairly quickly after the August meeting in 2019, and unfortunately that didn't come to pass. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the report, it was originally included in the report to Community Development Committee to make changes to that, but tonight's report does not include it. So while we haven't been collecting it, it is still an option to collect, and you can see that, based on the proposed fee chart, we are suggesting and showing you what those costs actually would be. So for example, the new single family residence would be $3,500 when you include that general plan maintenance fee in it. So that's a good picture, I think, a snapshot to show you what fees are going to cost if the resolution is approved as put before you tonight. One other option that we discussed was that you could choose to put a moratorium on the general plan maintenance fee collection and defer charging it to provide staff additional time to perform, or to hire a consultant to perform a fee study just for that general plan maintenance fee. So those two options again are basically continue forward with the resolution, which says that we're just not going to change the general plan maintenance fee at all, or it is to potentially, if you wanted to discuss further, putting a moratorium on that collection and giving us more time to determine an appropriate fee. So just moving on through the report, the fiscal impact. The proposed changes are expected to have no net increase in revenue from fees, assuming that service usage is similar to years past. The greenhouse gas emissions, there's no impact on the collection of fees. For consistency, it's consistent with Prop 26 and that only the fees that are changing are included in the schedules attached to the resolution. We did publish a public hearing notice on September 17th in compliance with Government Code 66016. And the implementation timeframes, should you choose to adopt a resolution tonight, that fees will become effective 60 days after adoption of the resolution, which is on or about November 28th, 2020. And the recommended action before you is to adopt the city council resolution updating fees for various planning and development services. And there are also several alternative actions. You can make minor modifications to the resolution prior to adoption. We can take feedback and conduct additional analysis before approving any resolution. We can recommend that the current fee schedule just remain in effect for the time being. And then not listed in the staff report, but something that I brought before you this evening is you may also choose to include a moratorium on general plan maintenance fees until we can perform a necessary study to bring forth some suggestions on changes to that general plan maintenance fee. And that pretty much concludes my item. And I'll bring it back to you.
Thank you so much for that report. So council, we're going to ask clarifying questions first, and then we will go to public comment. So clarifying questions on the report. Councilmember Alvin Smith.
Thank you, Chantel. It was a great report, and I appreciate you screen sharing because I'm madly trying to go back and forth on my little tiny laptop here. My question for you is, I hear rumors that there's an influx of people moving to this area because people have just want to leave the city and they want to work remotely and all that. So my question to you is, are you seeing a huge increase in requests for building permits, remodeling, and that sort of thing? And how? And is this what's prompting this, or is this something you've just experienced over the last couple of years?
So to answer your first question, I wouldn't say that there's been a large influx, but permit applications have been steady. So we're probably getting, about 2 per week. I have seen an increase in the number of new single family residences and ADUs, but that's been happening since the passage of the, I don't remember exactly what the law was. I'm sorry, in 2018, to increase housing stock for ADUs. So accessory dwelling units, we've had just a large influx in those. We're getting second units on, every other parcel. And so that's been a large quantity of our building permits, but there hasn't been a significant increase in that. And that the amount of permits that we're having was not a driver behind this. This really is related to many of the problems that we've had with the fee schedule that was passed last year. And it I think was a result of the fact that it was just so drastically different than the way that we had collected for as long as I can remember. We'd always done it based on the valuation of the permit as a percentage. And so it kind of balanced itself in that the amount of time that you might spend, the thought is that it was based on the complexity of the project, and a more expensive project could be more complex. And so there was some nexus between that type of fee. And last year when the fees got changed, we went to a flat fee, tiered amount, and there were some changes that were made. And I don't even think that the community development director was at the meeting at the time when many of those changes were made. And we went to a tiered model, which I don't think did a very realistic job of capturing the range of complexity with permits, because it was something like, up to $5,000 or $5,000 to $25,000. And so the complexity doesn't really change between $0 and $25,000. And over $75,000 is still a pretty significant portion of our permits. And so it just didn't really capture the actual staff time associated. And so that's really why we're here tonight.
Councilman Peters, go ahead, please.
I didn't quite, and maybe you covered this, Chantel, but I didn't quite get where we came to the conclusion that the general plan maintenance fee would be 1.5%. I know that you want us to perhaps give you more time as we move forward tonight through this resolution, potential resolution adoption. But that, of course, becomes very significant cost in all these permits that you've given examples of. And I'm just curious how we landed on 1.5%. And maybe you covered that, but I missed it, probably like Tess trying to go through and look at these things as you were speaking.
So you may not have missed it, and I may not have done a great job of pointing it out, but the 1.5% general plan maintenance fee is the existing fee on the books. So that did not change last year with the fee adoption, and it has been on the fee schedule for as long as I'm aware. So, and even in our municipal code, it does say 1.5% on the valuation of construction.
Okay.
Councilmember Peters, just to kind of follow up on that, it was actually, this is the fee that was adopted on November 8th of 2004. So it's been the same for more than 16 years now. It went into effect January 7th of 2005 and has not changed. And at that time, there wasn't much documentation as to why the 1% permit fee, building permit fee surcharge was picked, or the 1.5% general plan maintenance fee. And that's sort of one of the things we're grappling with now.
Okay, well, I regret to say that I was part of that council in 2004 that passed this, but I certainly don't remember, so thank you.
Councilmember Alvin Smith.
Hi, just another follow-up question. I know recently we adopted a, I'm not sure what the word is, but we are looking at time accounting, where all members of the staff are keeping track of their time. And so my first question is this a result of the time accounting that we've done currently? And if so, is this something that will be asked to change if it turns out there's less or more time going to this?
Chantel, do you mind if I take a crack at that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so Councilmember Alvin Smith, the calculations that we've been doing for the cost allocation plan are related, but it's not the same accounting. And so we are tracking, and I know one of the things that Chantel and her group have done is separately track some of that time. And it is related in that on DDAs, both systems kind of piggyback together. But the cost allocation plan and the fees here are different, but they do provide us, they are actually based on some of the same information, but separate allocations. But the idea being is the cost.
Okay, any other questions on the report? Okay, then we will open now for public comment. June, would you have any public comment?
Mayor, sorry for those delays. We finally got our vice mayor back though. So,
Yay.
the first comment I have, let me see, I need a timer. I know I have one here. First public comment on 7A is from Jacob Patterson. He says, in my opinion, the city's recommendations might seem prudent superficially, but the process is so flawed and lacking that anyone involved in presenting the recommendations should be embarrassed. Please correct the lack of a fee study and at least attempt to provide a basis to justify the proposed general plan maintenance fee. I object to the city proceeding without even attempting to calculate a reasonable basis for the fee. The city can't pick the public's pockets without justification. The next one is also from Jacob and the Mendocino Action Council for Accountable Government Organizations. And I'm going to start the timer because it's 2 pages, and I'll just read for the 3 minutes. MACFAGO finds the suggested revisions to the City of Fort Bragg's fees for building permits to be reasonable and prudent, but objects to the recommended action concerning the general plan maintenance fee because the city has failed to perform any supporting analysis or calculations to justify the proposed general plan maintenance fee. Normally, MAC FAGO would submit documents and analysis into the record to counter the city's faulty analysis. But because the city has produced absolutely no analysis to support this recommended action, there is nothing to counter. The city is required to provide the public a 10-day review period to evaluate the calculations and data that are proffered as support for a proposed fee. No such support was provided for the general plan maintenance fee, apparently because no such support exists. Even if supporting data and calculations existed, MAC FAGO would object to proceeding tonight because they would not have been made available for the mandatory public review period. MAC FAGO respectfully requests that the council direct staff to prepare the necessary calculations and fee study for the proposed general plan maintenance fee, publish that information for the minimum 10-day public review period, and then bring this matter back for a decision at a properly noticed public hearing. Absent that process, the city or MAC FAGO will likely be forced to seek judicial intervention through a validation proceeding. That is foolish and inefficient because it would involve significantly more time and resources than the several hours of staff time that would be necessary to complete a basic fee study for the proposed general plan maintenance fee. The results of such a fee study may indicate a different basis or rate for the general plan maintenance fee, and the proposal would need to be adjusted accordingly. Moreover, the city must factor in alternative funding sources, including planning grants that have been used and are likely to be used for the projects that could be funded using this funding source, and reduce the fee to compensate for the alternative funding. In recent years, the city actually funds most of its long-range planning through planning grants, like the planning grant for the mill site LCP from the Coastal Commission, or the Housing and Economic Development Planning Grant that is funding Sarah McCormick's position, as well as the consultant for the Community Land Trust. The city cannot charge fees purportedly to be used for planning projects that are actually funded through outside grants unless the funding needs for those planning projects exceed the alternative funding sources. Otherwise, the city will collect fees that far exceed the actual costs of what the fees were supposed to fund. There's more of it, but that's been the 3 minutes.
Thank you. Jane. Any other public comments?
We have 3 people in attendance, and I'd like to ask if any of you have any comments on this, if you could please use the raise hand feature. And meanwhile, I'll also check to see if we've received any emails. I see no hands raised, but Mr. Mayor, I have just received 2 emails. They're both from Jacob Patterson, but I've just read other records from him into the record. It's up to you do you want these read as well?
They'll be entered into the record, right? So
Yes, tomorrow they'll be added as an attachment to public comment for item 7A.
yes, thank you. So if there's no one else then, we'll give just a second there to see if anybody uses the chat feature or the raise your hand feature. Okay, hearing and seeing none, June, then we will then close the public hearing at 17 p.m. and bring it back to council for deliberation. Mr. Mayor, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. And Chantel, I apologize. I lost just about a little bit of time there. So I have one question. How close does this scenario, if it's adopted the way staff is recommending, brings us near or at least completely to full cost recovery on this process, permitting process?
The building permit fees themselves without the general plan maintenance fee should align us directly with cost recovery for the staff time spent reviewing the building permits. The general plan maintenance fee, as it's charged with the building permits, and it is included, you know, it is expected to remain on, should you recommend that, you know, that we don't make any changes tonight. And that is a fee that's collected and then saved separately in an account, and it's intended to fund, you know, ordinance changes, general plan maintenance, or excuse me, general plan amendments for both coastal and inland, and other such planning activities. So the idea is that then that money is collected and held in a separate account and used at the time to complete those studies necessary to keep our plans up to date.
Thank you.
I have two questions. How do our fees compare to the county or to another jurisdiction our size? Is first question. Second question is there ever a reimbursement, or if there's a balance, if it's not in alignment, say for instance, would an applicant get refunded some money that isn't really used or allocated for the time spent on that permit?
So I'm actually going to answer your questions in reverse order. If you give me just
Okay.
1 second, I actually have an item that I can show you that has the cost comparisons with the county and other cities. Let's see if I can get that really quick. Oh goodness. I guess I will answer your first question though, or your second question, which is under this current fee schedule, no, there wouldn't be any refunds unless someone was to withdraw their application prior to us issuing a building permit. And we have actually included a fee in there for amendments to plan sets, or, you know, whether they would be voluntary or corrections. If we'd gotten through the permit process and we'd already taken it over to the county, and then an applicant comes back and needs to make significant changes that require additional review, we can actually charge more. But the only way we would see it appropriate to make a refund would be if we, you know, if they were to withdraw their application, because the purpose here is cost recovery. If we've already done the review and we've already, you know, prepared those conditions for that permit, that's time spent. And so I don't think that was suggested, and I'm not sure that I would recommend that we do that unless that's something that you would like to see added. And if you give me just one more minute, I think I should be able to pull up these sample fees. I just seen them earlier because I'm not actually sure as a comparison. Let's see.
Mr. Mayor, one thing I will add while Chantel's looking for that we should keep in mind is that the city doesn't actually do its own building inspections. And so there's actually two aspects of a building permit. So an applicant will come into the city and apply through our process, and there's fees that are applied. And then they also go to the county when they're getting their building permit, and there'll be a separate fee structure paid. And that's kind of unique to us because we actually are contract with the county to provide those services. Many cities are all in one. So when you come in and you get a building permit, you're going to pay one fee. It's going to include your planning fees and all of your city fees. So it's hard to compare apples to apples here.
Okay, so I have pulled up for you a table, and now this is from 2018. Oh, you know what? This is actually not what I thought it was. I'm sorry. This is planning fees and not building permit fees. So that is not a very good example.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know. In my research though, to date, it is, like I mentioned, it is really common for agencies to charge based on valuation. That is a pretty common technique. And then another way that cities do it is based on the actual staff rates, which is what is proposed before you tonight. So I would imagine that for those municipalities that use this system, it's based on the actual fully loaded rates of their staffs. So in bigger cities, I would anticipate it, to cost more. Whereas in cities that are similar to us, to our size, that have similar staff rates, those costs should be pretty similar to this. And then in locations where they do it on a valuation based, it's, it's kind of the same thing. It's the bigger projects cost more.
Okay. But we're not out of whack with jurisdictions our size and similar fees, right? So we're pretty much in line with your research of other jurisdictions' fees?
Yes.
Okay.
I will, Mr. May, I do want to add to that for Chantel. Our general plan maintenance fee is currently higher and has been than other jurisdictions. And that is the one that we've kind of questioned and have some heartburn with ourselves.
Okay. Councilmember Alvin Smith, go ahead, please.
I have just a small problem with not having full use of the cost allocation plan that we're doing towards this. I know you said that Chantel has done her own evaluation of how much time is spent, but I mean, the whole point of having the cost allocation done by staff is so that we know how much work is spent on each of their jobs. How long do you think it would take before we could confirm, if we don't adopt this tonight, to confirm that the fees are about right per hour?
So I'll take a stab at it this time, I think. I'm not entirely familiar with the process behind the cost allocation plan, but the method that I use to determine how much time staff takes to review a permit was based on kind of two things. From a staff perspective, when we do our timesheets on a biweekly basis, we have several different task codes that are associated with the work that we're performing. One of them is a kind of a general CDD building permit processing that we can use. And so with the current fee schedule, anything that's below $75,000, what we do is we just bill our time to that code 52. Now, if it's a DDA, then we bill it directly to the DDA. But what has become really difficult with the DDA part is that the time that it takes to get those DDAs set up, to get the correct valuation, and the additional staff time for tracking, opening, closing, and logging your timesheets has actually, what we think, maybe making those more expensive for the applicant. And so, that's the kind of information that I was looking at, was how many hours are we billing to, that task code that's just the general building permits. And then also I looked at DDAs for an ADU or DDAs for a single family residence to see, what time we had actually billed against it. And then that information helped me decide, okay, well, if the engineering technician billed 2.5 hours, how did that break out for the actual plan review process?
Is it possible, Chantel, to provide us with those numbers?
There's nothing that was collated into a perfect Excel spreadsheet, but it's certainly something that I think that could be crafted for you. I mean, a lot of this is based on just having been a plan reviewer for the last 5 years and knowing, when I'm taking a look at a building permit, how much time I'm putting into it. Some of the other challenges that we have is that not all staff consistently books their time. A lot of times the administrative assistant might process 3 or 4 building permits all at the same time. So she'll take them all in, she'll stamp them all at the same time, she'll log them all at the same time. She might even walk them over to the county at the same time. So when it comes back to putting that to her timesheet, if 2 of those were DDAs and 2 of them weren't, it just becomes this, this really difficult process of being meticulous. And when you're only preparing your timesheet once every 2 weeks, if you don't do a really good job of either doing your timesheet during the day or at the end of each day, or keep a really good log of the way that you spend your time, there's not a perfect science to tracking it. So unfortunately, I don't have that exhibit, which I think is, what Mr. Patterson was having some difficulty with, is that I didn't have that to provide to him. But a lot of this, it has just been based on experience, based on, those annual collections of revenue we brought in from fees, and also how much staff time was spent, on those kind of general task codes. And then I just kind of took all those numbers, and I also went to each staff who's involved with the process, having done it myself, having talked with each of them. We prepared the spreadsheets basically that you have that broke down the categories of functions that we do. And I said, if, for example, new construction, LID or stormwater takes you an hour and a half, do you think that that's consistent? And then we started preparing this in about July. And so we kind of sat with it for the last couple of months, and then we revisited it with staff. Once I had prepared the report, I said, okay, this is what we're proposing. Do you think that this is consistent with the amount of time that you're actually spending on doing that? So we could certainly prepare something, I think, but I don't think it's an exact science.
Thank you. I agree with that. Having had to do that myself in my job at one point, I was spending more time trying to figure out what I was doing than I was actually doing it. So, and so it's only as good as the person that puts the information in. And I know you've done a really good job of trying to figure it out. It's got to be better than the percentage, which was a guess. I just wondered if the public is going to buy it unless we actually have numbers to show.
Council, any other comments? Councilman Peters.
Yes, I think the last whereas in the resolution itself kind of gets to where we're talking about. When you look at number 4, it says the modifications to current fees as identified in Exhibit A have been reviewed and are found to not exceed the estimated reasonable cost of providing the services for which the fees are levied. So I'm just asking Chantel if she feels comfortable with that in light of the discussion we've had.
I do. I feel like they truly capture the costs associated with the fees.
Okay.
And my question is probably along those same lines. Tabitha, then legal counsel has reviewed this. And is it your feeling that if we adopted this, that it would withstand a challenge to the city?
I think it's really important, and if you and what Councilmember Peters stated is pretty clear. And if you go to, all of these fees are based on Government Code Section 66014. And one of the things that it talks about is it goes through setting forth your building fees, your permit fees, and this also includes the general plan maintenance fee, which we've already identified as being an issue. Those fees may not exceed the estimated reasonable cost of providing the service for which the fee is charged, unless a question regarding the amount of the fee charged in excess of the estimated reasonable cost of providing the services or materials is submitted to and approved by a popular vote of 2/3 of those electors voting on the issue. So I think it's really important to point, it's not to exceed the estimated reasonable cost. It is based on estimates. There is a foundation for them. There is a period of time under the government code. You have 120 days if you want to challenge them. I think that all of the fees that are set forth here today, and again, with the exception of the general plan maintenance fee, which we're not imposing a change, so it would not be subject to those same challenges. I think we can make a good argument and a good percentage, and we've had these methodologies looked at by attorneys in the past, and we would not be bringing them forward if we didn't think that they could withhold that challenge. And again, the general plan maintenance fee is the one that we all know has not been looked at, and there is no information back from 2004 when it was passed as to how it was actually determined that 1.5% of the construction value was appropriate. So we have already directed that one as being somewhat of an issue, and we're not comfortable with, and we would like to actually come back with additional information on what would be an appropriate fee.
Would that warrant would that warrant a review of the 1.5%, warrant a consultant review, in your opinion?
I think if you want it to stand up and in a challenge, and we certainly know that we have a local attorney who will and has told us over and over again he will challenge it. It is something that when you look at it, as Chantel mentioned earlier, the general plan maintenance fee does a lot of things. It's where we update our ordinances, it's keeping track. It's also the fees that would cover the cost of updating our general plan. And keep in mind, we have two general plans. We have the coastal and the inland. So we have kind of double the expenses of most cities. And a city our size, it would not be unreasonable to spend $400,000, according to the California League of Cities, doing an update. So if we do that every 10 years as is recommended, that's between our two plans, that's $800,000 every 10 years, or an average of $80,000 a year. And even our 1.5, to put it in perspective, does not cover, doesn't bring in $80,000 a year. It's a pretty expensive item. And it is fair to say that we do actually supplement that with staff time, with grants. It's part of the reason those are available, because these are pretty expensive processes.
Councilmember Morcellet, please go.
I just want to comment that, unfortunately, every project is different and there is no cookie cutter answer here. So I think with the deposit accounts, we were trying to really approach this with precision, but the payoff is incredible amounts of staff time going to ensuring that precision. And that's just not efficient and ultimately not effective as far as utilizing our staff resources. So I do think this is looking to strike a balance between efficiency and precision, and taking its best shot at doing so. So I don't know. I'm inclined to go ahead and accept this fee schedule. Is it premature to make a motion?
No, I think that it's we're still discussing. I would just add that I have difficulty with revising and increasing fees at this time because of all the uncertainty we're living through right now, right? All of the uncertainty for folks trying to build and trying to renovate. It's already expensive and prohibitive. And that's the reason we don't have adequate housing stock, in my opinion. I'm of the mind of waiting until things might settle down. That hopefully might encourage and spur some growth. But that's my opinion of 1 of 5.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so Chantel, you could answer this. I think you said this, but correct me if I'm wrong. The changes and the recommendations that you're making here and the adjustments are to actually bring, the plan is to make it cheaper for the builders, right? The idea being that maybe we were charging them too much based on our previous plan, and this is going to bring that more into line.
So that's kind of a double-edged sword, and there's kind of two parts of your question. Like I mentioned, for the last year, we temporarily ceased collecting the general plan maintenance fee. So this year, we've actually been collecting exactly what you see in the comparison table. So if a permit that was over the counter was $5,000, it was basically a tier 1, and that's what that applicant would pay. If we, however, were to have included the general plan maintenance fee, which if no changes are made tonight and we keep the existing fee schedule, there is still in place via that 2004 resolution that we could do the general plan maintenance fee. There would be those two fee columns would be almost identical. So unfortunately I think that the way that it was shown in the report, it was a little bit misleading, because when you add that general plan maintenance fee, that 1.5%, which is still based on the valuation, and you add it to the $158, an over-the-counter permit would actually be more expensive than with that kind of level 1 simplest project. But that may not be true for a commercial development, where we right now would use a DDA. We would collect it on staff time. There may or may not be additional staff time associated with the administrative processes, and their general plan maintenance fee, again, would be based, in both cases, the general plan maintenance fee would be identical. So I guess I don't have a really clean answer for you about whether or not it was going to reduce the fees. What is challenging is that I know you're on Community Development Committee, and those original fee table did show many of those fees actually going down when we were proposing to change the general plan maintenance fee. But we only brought forward part of your recommendation. So we're not proposing to change the general plan maintenance fee. In that original report, we were recommending that it be a percentage of the permit fee, not the valuation of the project. And so since we're not moving forward with that, and we're keeping this, you know, really old way of processing the general plan maintenance fee, you know, it would be consistent with the amount of fees that we've collected from 2004 up to 2019 when this change was made. So last year when the fees were changed, there was a pretty significant reduction in, you know, fees collected across the board. Tonight's recommendation brings us more in, you know, more consistent with actual cost recovery, and it allows us to, you know, continue to collect that general plan maintenance fee so that we can have money to make those plan updates.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, having heard that and understanding that after a motion made, there's always room for discussion. I'm willing to make a motion that we adopt City Council resolution revising the city's fee schedule for various building permit fees and services.
Okay, we have a motion, discussion on the motion. Councilmember Morcel Hay.
Tabitha, if we put a hold on the general plan maintenance fees while we do more research into them, would that count as imposing a change and open us up to a challenge?
It would be just like you do with your in lieu of parking fees that you've done for many years. So the fee would remain the same. You would put a moratorium in place. My suggestion would be 6 months. Where we look at it. And again, you're going to probably do a study. We'll probably spend a little bit of money doing a study, but at least you'll have a good solid foundation for your fee. And then council can decide whether or not we'll bring forward a recommended fee, and council can make the decision as to whether or not that fee is appropriate in the sense of, should it be lower? I mean, you can always subsidize your building fees. General direction in the past has been that we would recover the reasonable cost of providing the services. And so that's kind of the whole approach that we've taken here, and the approach we would take with the general plan maintenance fee. But you can certainly put a moratorium in place. We'll bring it back to you at your next meeting. Give us 6 months, and then we can bring back a recommendation, and then council can weigh in again on whether or not that is an appropriate fee based on your goals for development. Just remember that anything that we don't recover the cost of does get subsidized by tax dollars elsewhere.
And if we put a moratorium on it, Chantel, would that bring the numbers lower than where they were previous to the 2019 change?
So I actually, while you guys were talking, I went ahead and pulled up the CDC report. I'm going to screen share again so that you can see what those actual fees are, and they are considerably less. So I'm going to share this with you. And now you can see the 2021, this is without the general plan maintenance fee. It's pretty much excluded in this. So an over-the-counter permit that's $158 right now would be $56. A residential remodel that's that's $250 right now would be $116. So this is kind of your current fee column, or excuse me, the proposed. If we do not collect the general plan maintenance fee, this is what a person would pay. And then over here is what they are currently paying. So you can see in many instances, the fees go down or are pretty much consistent with what we've been collecting. And then just so that you can see it again, let me put up today's report so that you can. Did the screen change for you, or do I have to do another screen?
It did not change.
It did not change.
Give me 1 second to get to it. I think I have to save this stop, and then I have to ask screen sharing again.
While she's doing this, if you can hear me, Bernie, I'm just wondering if the maker of the motion would be willing to accept an amendment as suggested by our city manager, of a 6-month moratorium before someone goes ahead and seconds your original motion.
I think we can do that as a separate item, can't we?
We can, and actually we would bring it back as a separate item anyways, because it wasn't agendized for tonight, but we can certainly take direction and bring that back as a resolution on your next meeting.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, so now you should be able to see the same table, but this is with the general plan maintenance fee included. So what was $56 without the general plan maintenance fee is $93. You can see where it gets significant is about here. So a new single family residence with the general plan maintenance fee is about $3,500. Whereas without it, it is $864. So that's kind of where you start to see a significant change. And that is because it's a valuation based fee.
Okay. Councilmember Alvin Smith.
In a similar vein, I'm wondering if we adopted something like this and could have it sunset in a certain amount of time, say, well, we're getting out of the construction time, so 6 months I think is not really fair. Maybe a year we adopt this, and in a year it sunsets and we take another look at the hard numbers and like the effect that it's had on construction and on actual time allocated to each of those projects. So that was one suggestion.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Vice Mayor. Any other discussion, or yes, Councilmember Morcell?
I was going to go ahead and second it.
Okay. We have a motion by the Vice Mayor and a second by Councilmember Morcell Hay. Roll call, please, June.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
No.
Norvell,
Yes.
and Lee.
Yes. And then the further direction, right, Tabitha, is that you would bring back to us in what time frame moratorium on changing the maintenance fee.
So what I'm going to bring back at your next meeting is, and I'm assuming this is what you'd like, is the moratorium. And then we'll establish a period of time, and we can have it be longer or shorter, but it can also be something that you can revoke. We'll set it up so that if we bring back a general plan maintenance fee proposal to you in 3 months, we can revoke it in 3 months or use the additional time. So if that's the council's direction, we can do that at the very next meeting.
Okay, I see nod heads in affirmation. Thank you. And June, how are we on a break? Do you think it's time for?
7:46. It's up to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, let's take a 5-minute break now, if that's okay with you all. 5 minutes, we'll come back.
Mr. Mayor, did you step out and see that moon?
No, I didn't. Is it like orange?
Oh, it's apocalyptic. Yeah, it's red. It's amazing. It's gorgeous.
Hey, could I please get a mic test for John Smith?
Test.
Much better.
Test.
Pretty good.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
I don't know about the earmuffs, though. I am kind of cold, but you know.
Looks
You
like you're
are?
ready for takeoff.
Lucky.
You're the only one.
He has the only air conditioned office in the whole building, right?
No.
Okay.
I do have some Fort Bragg air conditioning.
I went to that outlet store and they have air conditioners there on the floor there. I'm like, wow, okay, maybe like 4 miles inland, you might need that. I don't know, but
I don't know. They might be forward thinking here.
right,
We'll see how the week goes.
right. Yeah, today was pretty muggy and hot.
That's weird.
I think we got to 80 maybe here.
I think so.
Did they shut off the power this weekend?
No,
And we are not, our county is not on any of the watch lists at this point in time for PSPS, so.
thank goodness. Okay, we're all back then. We'll go ahead and reconvene our city council meeting. Our first item is item 8A. Receive, report, and consider adoption of city council resolution endorsing the strategic plan to address homelessness in Mendocino County as adopted by the Mendocino County Homeless Services Continuum of Care. And our city manager has this report.
And this is going to be very brief. Just a reminder, at the last meeting on September 14th, Dan McIntyre and Shannon Riley, representing the Mendocino County Homeless Services Continuum of Care, presented the strategic plan that they had adopted back in April. And one of the things they asked the council for was an endorsement of that plan. And so what's before you tonight and the resolution is an endorsement of that plan and an adoption of it. In addition to that, there was the request that this be a conduct of business item so that the public would have an opportunity to weigh in and provide their thoughts and opinions and suggestions on the plan. So because it's not my plan, I'm not going to go into any details, and because you had a much more thorough presentation by the folks that actually serve on that committee, we'll leave it at that. But if there are any questions I can answer, I'll take a stab.
Any questions from the council? And it was a great recommendation by Councilman Peters to bring it forward to allow our community to comment. June, would you have any comments on this item?
I have
Public
not
comments.
received any public comment on item 8A, Mr. Mayor, but we do have 2 people in attendance, and I would ask that if you'd like to make a public comment on item 8A, please use the raise your hand feature and you can speak now. I see no hands, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'll
Council,
go ahead then, if that's okay with the rest of the council, make a motion to adopt the resolution of the Fort Bragg City Council endorsing the strategic plan to address homelessness in Mendocino County adopted by the Mendocino County Homeless Services Continuum of Care.
I'll second that.
right. We have a motion by Councilman Peters and a second by Councilmember Alvin Smith. Roll call, please, June.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
and Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is to receive, report, and consider adoption of City Council resolution downgrading the Stage 2 water conservation measures to Stage 1 water conservation measures. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will be brief. So September did bring its challenges with our low flows on the Noyo River and also those high tides that we were expecting. Sources actually held up really well throughout. We used about 200,000 gallons from our backup emergency supply at the reservoir. That was about 3 days of use, which is what it's designed for. It's fantastic. Fortunately, our customers also conserved a good bit of water, about 12%. Obviously that varies from day to day, but we'll use that number. They did a good job of that and we appreciate that. Also, we had an increase in the water flows in the Noyo River, which is typical this time of year. Whenever those trees go into hibernation, I won't call it that, but you know, they just reduce their uptake in the water and it starts flowing a little bit better. It was at 1.86 when I wrote the report. It's at 1.47 now. So it's still pretty close and still providing a good amount of water for us. In October, we are still expecting some pretty high tides, and it's not just the high tides. Sometimes we'll get 2 high tides around 6 foot or above. So those double tides on days are actually especially challenging. We've got a few of those coming in October. We are still planning on an extended dry period of time, mid-November, even through November. We're just being very conservative this year because we really don't know the forecast, and I don't think anybody really does, but we're doing our best to be conservative and make sure we don't overuse. And we're just really looking still at the 2015 numbers and how long it took. I think we got rain about the 1st or 2nd week in November. So we'll hope for that, but plan for longer than that. So in October, we do have about 7 days of those high tides and potentially an 8th day. So we'll be looking at using some of those emergency reserves at that time. But everything is actually functioning really well. A lot of it's due to the operations of the plant as well. We're able to pump around different ways and increase or reduce the amount that we use from the tanks. We keep it full and topped off at all times. So there's a lot of detail into that, but that's really saved us and got us down to only using the reservoir for 3 days. So we certainly learned a lot from 2015. If you don't go through problems, a lot of times you don't learn. So we've learned a lot, and we're taking that. And then after this year, we'll add to that and be able to improve the system once again. And once again, we're just asking that we do downgrade that stage 2 to a stage 1. 10% is certainly acceptable. And I know a lot of people have some small projects that are allowed within the stage 1 area. And we'd like to be able to do that for them. And we have made it through September and almost into October and still have a fairly full reservoir. So we're confident that we'll make it through November without any issue. And with that, that's all I have, unless y'all have questions.
Mr. Mayor. Is that a green light?
I think, Mr. Mayor, you are on mute. If you would unmute, please.
Can't you read my lips? Yeah,
Good.
Bernie, go ahead.
I didn't want to assume, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. I lost my train of thought, but John, when we were at stage 1 and asking for a 10% reduction, do you have any idea of what kind of response we got versus being in a stage 2 and getting roughly a 12% response, asking for 20?
Actually, we were pretty close to 10% at that time, and we didn't change much towards the 20% other than that, we're at 12. But I think some of this has to do with, it's pretty short span in between those changes. Everybody's howling outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's we never quite got there, and I think the customers would certainly get there. But and there's a lot of other factors involved. Also, there's tourism and temperature and things like that changes people's uses and things like that.
Sure. So how much time in between council implementing the stage 2 and the notices going out in the bills was there versus to now? I mean, so basically once the customers got their bills to you recognizing the increase of 2%, how much time was there?
I am not sure what date those actually went out.
They went out approximately on September 6th, 7th.
Okay. So three weeks roughly.
Yeah, I could look at that data and get you an answer, but again, it was the only 2%. So that's, that's could be fluff or different factors affecting that too. So it's response time. I'm not sure. I can go back and research that.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Councilmember Alvin Smith.
Sometimes the space bar works and sometimes not. Must be 8 o'clock since I hear a lot of howling. But I'm here in Portland, so it's hard for me to hear it directly. Anyway, my question is, we don't have rain on the forecast, and we're talking about maybe another month until potentially we do have rain. And we have some king tides coming. What is the impact of us just extending this until the first rain?
The impact on our users or
extending
supply?
the 20% reduction until the first rains? What's the impact, do you think? Are projects ruined? Gardens are completely ruined? The public is going to be up in arms. What is there, because we don't know if there's going to be any rain. We don't know if this is another drought. I hate for us to go up and down, up and down. So just asking.
Sure. What I've received for calls is mostly washing and rinsing off of ash from the smoke or the fires. A lot of that, a lot of solar panels that are, if you don't keep them clean, they don't produce as well also. So that kind of thing. A couple of paint jobs and things like that. Most of them are pretty small. So I haven't gotten too much, had too many issues from folks. Yeah.
Councilmember Alvin Smith, I'll just point out that there won't be any public shaming by the mayor on this matter. That's a Paul McCarthy, rest in peace. One of his articles about on the bacon. Anyway, there won't be public shaming. Councilmember Morsell Hay.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that and ask, how difficult is it to go back and forth between stage 1 and stage 2? If we find ourselves in a position of needing to go back to stage 2, is that more challenging, or do you feel like it's better to kind of go back and forth so people are adjusting and not getting just fatigue?
And this recommendations comes with a lot of thought also. We're still fairly conservative. Like I said, we've only used about 200,000 gallons of our reservoir, and we still have 14.5 million. So what that equates to is losing the Noyo River for 36 days totally. So we're in pretty good shape, especially with the 10 or 12% reduction. And the river's up just a little bit also. So we're conservative with that 10%. I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't believe in it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call that the credibility of your recommendation into question at all. I was just, kind of piggybacking on the question to kind of say, and if there's concern, how big of a deal would it be going back to stage 2 if we really have to?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't take it like that. Okay. But yeah, it could be in the form of a special meeting if it's a true drop dead emergency that we need to take action right away. But also, it would be 2 weeks to the next council meeting that we could process that if need be.
But people are pretty responsive, you found.
They seem to be at least at the 10%, 20% seems to be a little bit more delayed. Of course, it's a lot of times, our water use is down anyway. So a lot of people have just really adopted a lot of that 2015 behavior. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more of a struggle to get to that 20% also. But as the vice mayor requested, I will also look into that and see what the timing is on the response. That's good information to have.
Any other questions on the report? Will there be any public comment, June, on this item?
I have received no written public comments. Let us see if anybody here in attendance would like to speak on item 8B. Please use the raise hand feature. None.
Okay, we'll bring it back to council. The people of Fort Bragg are really considerate of each other and really, conserve. And I think that's just become a part of our life since 2015. Would there be consideration of a possible another water storage capacity increase, another tank that you see in our near future that we might consider looking into, or if that's a possibility for grant funding in the future? As we try to plan for more housing, we're going to need more storage capacity. Councilman Peters is always talking about desal, and I think that still needs to be a consideration. But do you foresee another tank in our future?
Probably not another tank, but potentially another reservoir. We're looking at several options, and I was going to bring those back to the Public Works and Facilities Committee meeting and talk that over.
Okay. That's great.
But yeah, we've got about $12 million in capital improvement monies that we're going to be spending over the next 5 years as well. All directed in conserving water and just making what we have stronger.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments from the council? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've done our due diligence here. I think staff has. We're not taking away the emergency. We're just reducing it down to stage 1. I think if we get that information out, people are still going to be cautious. I'm 100% comfortable with this. I'm not really a big fan of going back and forth all the time, but I think what staff saw was, the potential for a problem. So they addressed it by putting us ahead to a stage 2, unlike the last time where I think council was forced to jump right into, I think, a stage 3. So, I'm good with being cautious. I think that's what was done here. And, I'm trusting in staff that, they're comfortable with it. So I absolutely am behind going back to a stage 1.
Okay. We do have a resolution here tonight.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we adopt City Council resolution downgrading the stage 2 water conservation measures to stage 1 water conservation measures.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second.
And there's a second by Council Member Marcel Hay. Roll call, please, Jim.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned under agenda review, item 8C, we're going to drop down to the bottom of the agenda because I will recuse myself because I am an employee of Adventist Health. So I'll recuse myself at the end of the meeting and beat you all home. So then item 8D is to receive, report, and consider adoption of joint City Council Municipal Improvement District Resolution approving Budget Amendment 2021-04, adjusting selected expenditure budgets. And our city manager has this.
So this is going to be the season of budget amendments. And what you have before you was added to the agenda late. We actually amended it to add it. And there's just a couple things that I wanted to point out that are included. Probably the most important and the reason that this was brought forward now instead of waiting until the next meeting when we'll have a more robust budget amendment is that we would like to add back a second planner position. This was one that was actually frozen when we revised the budget back in April, and we decided that we needed to take some drastic actions. Typically, the Community Development Department has had a director, 2 planners, and an admin assistant. And at this point in time, we have a senior planner and an admin assistant who we just brought back to full time. So this would this would bring the department up to 3. But again, historically, it's operated with 4 folks. We happen to have a candidate that was on our eligibility list, and we would like to take the opportunity to, if council approves this tonight, to extend that offer. He's somebody who has actually moved to the area. And so it would give us a chance to bring somebody on right away if the council approves this. And it's somebody who has the experience and sort of a level of expertise that I think will help move us forward and take on some of the work. As part of that, if you've looked at the staff report, you'll notice that we're going to offset part of the cost back to those general plan maintenance fee account that we talked about earlier, but we would allocate an additional $25,000 to do maintenance and update and ordinances on our general plan, and also some of the mill site planning work could be run through this. In addition to that, we've got some net changes in other funds, non-general fund, just some cleanup work. We've adjusted on 2 of our capital improvement projects for our streets. We made a correction of reducing one expenditure by 200,000 and an increase of 100,000 on the other, for a net actually decrease in expenditures of $100,000. And then we also have received an MCOG regional surface transportation funding, and we had not allocated that in the original budget. So that's actually a net where we're going to recognize the revenue coming in from those grant funds, and then the 3 projects that the money will be spent on. And it's a striping machine for our streets, radar trailer for our police department, and then it will also contribute to the Maple Street project design work. So again, that's sort of a net zero. At the end of the day, our general fund, if you approve the budget as this a budget amendment as proposed, you will decrease by a net of $36,474. And that's just the salary for the remainder of the year, less those general plan maintenance fees. What this does is the current general fund has a surplus projected of about $344,000, and this would reduce that to about $307,000. So there is a small reduction in your surplus, but it does maintain a surplus, and I know that's been the direction of council to be pretty conservative. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And as I said, I know that there was conversations about some additional budget amendments, and those will be brought back to you at your next meeting in October. You're on mute, Mayor.
Councilmember Albin Smith.
There goes the space bar again. I just have one question. Where were we at, say, a year ago with a surplus, and where are we at now? I just want to know how far we've gone.
So you're actually better off than you were a year ago. So last year's budget, we had originally budgeted a very small surplus, and that actually, I think by the time, I take that back because we hadn't gotten that far into the year, but you had a very small surplus. So you're much better off in the general fund. The other thing that I'll talk in more detail at the next meeting, but we have gotten the sales tax it's the sales tax that we receive in July. And we've compared it to last year, and I don't have any details because that's not available from the state, but it was only down 4% from the previous year. So I suspect that we will continue as busy as town is, and as many people seem to continue to be visiting, that we will end up actually probably doing better this year than last year as far as where we end the year.
That's good news indeed. Thank you.
Any other Councilmember Peters?
Yeah, I just had a short question, and I don't know that Tabitha knows the answer, and I think I know the answer, but I'm just curious if that radar trailer is limited to just showing people speed, or if we're able to program words on there, which is something we talked about, especially during the COVID-19 situation where masks required, or, you know, conserve water. Is it only radar speed, or is
I'm pretty sure that we can actually program the words on it because we made the comment that if we had purchased this already, we would have been able to do that when we talked about the mask signs and the fact that we would have to rent those signs for about $2,000 a month. So I'm about 90% sure, but I will confirm and send an email tomorrow if there's something different.
Okay, because I think that's important that we have something like that at our disposal. I think it'd be very helpful.
And I think Mr. Smith raised his hand. He may have a better answer.
Yeah, so I did the initial research, but yeah, it will have a signboard. It will record speeds also in certain streets as well. So we'll have some data logging there so we can monitor streets and activity and speeds and whatnot. So it gives us a lot of possibilities. And it's also Wi-Fi, so you can download all that pretty easily. So a lot of information from this. It's an excellent piece of equipment.
I think it's an excellent tool to add to our belt.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the CIP street resurfacing reduction by 200,000, what project are we giving up?
You're not actually giving up anything. There was inconsistencies in the original budget as it was adopted. This is really an error. So in one fund, it was shown as just the $206,405. And in the fund that the money came for, it was shown at $406,405. So this is actually just really that, and the number above it is a cleanup. So
We found $200,000.
we didn't really find, we made an error in entering it in the original budget the council adopted. So you found it, but we can't take really any credit for it.
Sure you can. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? June, would
There are
you-
none.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was ready to make a motion, but if maybe there was a question.
Yeah, let's see if there's any public comment on this item, June.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, public comment on item 8D
Okay.
from Jacob Patterson. Hiring another planner is far better than wasting a lot of public money on unnecessarily expensive outside consultants for ordinances and other planning projects, e.g. the cannabis cultivation ordinance. Unfortunately, adding more headcount is unlikely to address the real underlying problem, which is not a lack of staff resources, but pervasive incompetence and improper processes that continually undermine our community's ability to develop and grow both physically and economically. And we still have 2 people in attendance. If anybody would like to make a comment on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature. I don't see anything.
Thank you. There's certainly no incompetence on our staff here on this report, especially tonight. So thank you. Any other comments from the council? We do have a resolution before us.
Hearing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the resolution of the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Board adopting Budget Amendment 2021-04, amending the fiscal year 2020-21 budget.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Peters and a second by Councilmember Albin Smith. Roll call, please. June.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
and Lee.
Yes. Thank you. The next item, 8E, is to receive, report, and consider adoption of joint City Council Municipal Improvement District resolution for an emergency repair of a sewer main line on Highway 1 and authorizing the city district manager to sign related documents. Mr. Smith.
John, could you please unmute your mic and so we can hear your report? Thank you.
Sure. I haven't, yeah. So on Wednesday, September 23rd, last week, a contractor was working with Caltrans to do some rehab on the street on Highway 1 about the area at Alder Street in front of FedEx there. After paving already, they found a depression in the asphalt and they thought it was a manhole. So they jackhammered the hole looking for it and it just fell in. So after further investigation, looks like our pipe did actually collapse. The top collapsed and actually the bottom is still just fine. The sewer is actually flowing, if you can believe it. There was no spill, but we'd like to prevent that through this action. So this type of pipe was installed back in 2000 or 1970. And it turns out it doesn't last real long. And we're rather fortunate that it did last as long as it did. As I mentioned here in the staff report, generally they saw soft problems around 5 years, and at 10 years, major failures. So, hey, we're doing pretty good. But unfortunately, we have quite a bit more of this out. It was used on force mains, so Noyo Harbor. We have 2 lift stations down there. Pudding Creek has already been upgraded several years ago with high HDPE, high density polyethylene. And so that's okay. But Elm Street, North and South Noyo will still need to be rehabbed. So we'll continue to work in that direction. The size of this hole was 4 by 10 by 5 foot deep. Pretty fortunate that no vehicles fell in, especially the construction crew. They paved over this, so it's amazing. So anyway, as you can see, it's coned off. It's closed. We're working with Caltrans, of course, and we'll leave that lane closed for as long as it takes to get the repair done. There is a crack after cameraing. The roof of the pipe is cracked in several locations, so it's there's quite a bit of potential for additional failure if we leave it open. So we're going to try to nip that one. Our code does provide for these type of emergency repairs. Our Fort Bragg Municipal Code, as well as state contracts, prevailing wage code, or state code, also includes the same or similar language. In the case of emergency, when public interest and necessity demand the immediate expenditure of public money to safeguard life, health, or property. And it also requires a 4/5 vote. I won't go through the entire code, but certainly if there is more collapse, we could cut off that line and we could have a pretty major spill. So this is certainly fits the description of an emergency. So the scope of work is going to include, we are going to go ahead and do some cure in place pipe work with this. First of all, the contractor will remove and replace up to 80 feet. We've identified about 65 feet, but I just told him to quote the full 80 feet just to make sure. And that's a 21-inch sewer main, which is a really odd size. And that's unfortunate because it costs a little bit more. But after replacing those sections of pipe, we will be running a cure in place pipe through it. I think most of you are familiar with our previous projects throughout town. It's a slip lining basically, and it expands and gives it some structure as well. So we'll be doing that from about where the cookie company is all the way down to Alder. So that's right at 600 feet. We want to make sure that none of the rest of that fails. It's in the travel lane. So it's pretty critical that we stabilize that now and not wait for future problems. This will require bypass pumping, of course, so the contractor can do the work. There'll be a few layers to this that make it a little bit challenging, but not too much. One of the other unfortunate things is that the backfill was sand. So that's part of the reason for such a large sinkhole. It eroded and actually went into the remaining pipe, and it's down at the wastewater plant somewhere. So Alden's dealing with that, but it's fine. And of course, we'll seal things up according to Caltrans spec and get the compaction that they require, and also the asphalt repairs of any damage we've done. So with that, I think that's all I have. Questions?
Questions from the council? Councilmember Albin Smith.
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, the first thing that came up is there any kind of class action suit happening with this company that sold all the Techite pipe? And it sounds like, a lot of municipalities are affected as soon as 5 years. That's a huge expense. And I'm wondering what you know about that. And the second thing, my second question is, 80 feet of 21-inch pipe, which you said is very expensive. I'm wondering, do we absolutely have to use 21-inch pipe? Is there any kind of fitting we can do to change the size? Just wondering.
So the lawsuit first. Yes, there have been many of those, if you can imagine, but they pretty much ran out of money around the 90s because, you know, they just had, there were some large, claims against them. It's not quite possible at this time, unfortunately. And also, as far as the cost of pipe, more so it's the cure in place pipe portion that's expensive because it's a custom size. Originally, I was looking at pipe bursting and increasing the size, but that's a very costly idea considering the size, the scale of the project. It just doesn't quite make sense. I would, and currently we're working on that sewer assessment plan. We're going to in the near future, and this is what we kind of want to identify as what types of pipe, what sizes do we need to upsize, things like that. So we're going to go through that process during that period as well. Did that answer both your questions?
It does. And then it just brings up the other question, which is how confident are you with this brand of pipe that you're getting now? It has tested, tried and true. Other people have been using it a long time. How do you feel about it?
Very good. It's basically like a 1-inch PVC. It's I wouldn't call it indestructible, but yes, it'll last us for the next 50 years, no problem.
John, are we doing the work?
No. So we're looking to use HDR, which helped us out with the wastewater plant. Very precise and correct the first time when it deals with specs. And this is going to be pretty simple specs for a project like this. And also Walland is in the area, and they're probably going to help us out with the pipe replacement portion. And they will hire a cure in place pipe company to come in and slip that line.
So an emergency repair, we don't have to send it for bids?
Correct.
Okay.
Because that would probably, by the time we got the bids back and everything, the insurance would probably be 3 months. And we really need to get this done before it rains.
Yes. Any other questions from the council? How do they guarantee us, well, how do they avoid spills? I mean, how would, what steps do they take to avoid a spill when this is when they start this project?
So in this case, they will pump around. So they'll pull out of one manhole and put it into the other downstream outside of the excavation. So you'll have a system of pipes, if you will, that'll run the length of that project.
Well, learn something new every day. Any other questions from the council? June, would you have any public comment?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I have one from Jacob Patterson.
Okay.
He writes, shouldn't the city inspect other sections of our infrastructure where TechID is used still in place to try to discover other breaks and leaks? There are water shortages, so fixing major leaks should in the city-owned portion of the water system should be of the first priority. I think there must be a typo or something in that, but I read that word for word, so.
Okay. Thank you. Any other participant comments or chats or email? Oh.
I only have one person left in attendance.
Okay.
Robin, if you'd like to speak or ask a question, speak to the council on this, please raise your hand. No, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We'll bring it back to council. Any further questions or discussions? Councilmember Albin Smith.
If we're ready for a resolution, any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I think it's important that we applaud staff here. These kind of things happen.
Yeah.
There's nothing anybody could really do about it. It was nobody's fault. But what's important is how we handle these things. And I saw John and some other city employees down there. I think it was just maybe middle of last week. So for this to end up on our desk just a few days later with a plan in place to get this done, I'm not 100% confident that this would have happened this way 6 months ago. So John, you, your staff, Tabitha, all of City Hall, I applaud you and thank you for the way that you handled this.
Thank you. I'll share that.
All right, so then we're ready for a motion then.
I would move that we adopt a resolution of the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Board providing direction for emergency repair of a sewer line, main line in Highway 1 and authorizing the city district manager to sign the related documents.
All right, for the motion, Councilmember Alvin Smith, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Councilman Peters. Roll call, please, Jim.
Peters,
Yes.
Horsfield Hayes,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes. All right, so then
Thank
our
you all.
final item, I'm going to turn over to our acting mayor, Norvell, and I will bid you all a good night and don't miss me too much.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so Tabitha, Council, I apologize. I did not do the math here until the mayor did, and my wife also works for Adventist. So I am going to separate myself from this for that reason and ask Councilmember Peters if he will take over for me.
Sure.
All right, so good night all, thank you.
And thank you.
Night.
Okay, our final item has been moved on the agenda review to item 8C. This is to receive a report and consider adoption of a city council resolution ratifying the city manager's execution of a memorandum of understanding between the city of Fort Bragg and Adventist Health Mendocino Coast, authorizing the Adventist Health Mendocino Coast application and enrollment in the section 340B of the Public Health Services Act program. I believe, Tabitha, is that you?
Yes, and this is pretty straightforward. So 2 weeks ago exactly, I got a call from Adventist Health Mendocino Coast asking if we would authorize their application to the what's called the Section 340B program. And what that is, it was created in 1992, and it requires drug manufacturers to provide outpatient drugs to eligible healthcare organizations and covered entities in order to stretch those limited resources in, so that they can use the additional funding to basically take care of indigent and folks that can't pay. The reason that this didn't come to you before I signed it was that they needed the application to submit the same day, and there was no way we could get it on the council agenda for that evening. So I went ahead and signed it. And with the understanding, I made it very clear that the council would have to ratify my execution of that agreement. And if that did not happen, that we would actually be terminating the next day. There is a termination clause of 60 days. So we would, if the council decides that this isn't something that you wanted to support, we could do that. But the program does benefit our community. And one of the things, if you've read the memorandum of understanding that was signed, Adventist Health Mendocino Coast commits to the fact that they will provide indigent care of at least $1 million a year in this coming year, and that in addition to that, they'll ensure that anyone who ends up in the emergency department will receive service regardless of their ability to pay. So it does support our community. One of the other things that's sort of a piece of this that I think is important to note is that the hospital also has the ability to contract with other pharmacies to provide, to receive these discounts and provide services to our community. And it's my understanding that there are a number of pharmacies that are also sort of contracted with from the hospital to receive those benefits. So with that, I'll certainly turn it over to the council if you have any questions. I will also give the caveat that Until 2 weeks ago, I did not know what a program 340B was, so don't ask me anything really hard.
Okay, thank you, Tabitha. Any questions? Councilmember Smith? Test. I think you're on mute.
Spacebar. You're on mute again.
Yeah, I got it.
Sorry.
The space bar is a great little tool if it works. Okay, I just had a couple questions about this memorandum of understanding. First of all, it says that they've been providing care, the commitment since 2018-19 to the residents of Fort Bragg. Is that true?
Well, to be fair, the Mendocino Coast District Hospital has, and the Adventists in their other locations, they have a similar agreement with the city of Ukiah for the Ukiah location and with Willits. So they're basically talking about the care that the prior hospital. And one of the reasons that this needed to be done was the change from Adventist, from the district to Adventist. This was just one of those things that kind of fell through the cracks, and at the last minute, they realized they needed to apply for in their own name.
Well, it just seemed like boilerplate language where it says continues, AHMC continues, agrees to continue its historic commitment. And I'm like, geez, that's not long history, but we're talking about the Coast Hospital. So yes.
And I will, just to be fair, this was not one of those documents that they spent a lot of time drafting. In fact, if you go to the last page, you'll notice it skips from paragraph 4 to 6. They were bringing it over to me to sign on that Monday. And I said, I can't sign it until you send it to me and I can actually read it. So it was done in haste to get the application in and to meet the deadline.
I appreciate that. And I won't pick on it anymore.
Any other questions of council members? If not, we'll ask June if there's any public comment on this item.
I've received no public comment on item 8C, and Robin's the only one in the waiting room right now, and she's already texted that she doesn't have any problems or any comments to make, that she's good. So I think there's none,
Okay.
Mr. Acting Mayor.
All right, I'll remind the council members that there's just 3 of us left, so this will take a unanimous vote of support if this resolution is to pass, and I'll entertain a motion to do so.
Sorry, I'm pulling up the resolution. Wow, getting a hug from my sweet child.
Want
Okay.
help?
What's that?
Do you need help?
Okay. I move to adopt the resolution of the Fort Bragg City Council ratifying the city manager's execution of a memorandum of understanding with Adventist Health Mendocino Coast.
Albin Smith seconds that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Jim, can we have a roll call, please?
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters.
Yes. And thank you very much. Make sure you hug that child, Jessica.
It's hard to resist.
Yes. Okay, well, I think that'll conclude our meeting. If there's any other discussions that we need to take, I don't believe so on the agenda. So
Nope.
with that,
Okay.
we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Adios.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.